All right. So if you're on IMG and you've been wondering how you're going to get competitive for the 2025 match, let me go in here and I'll invite Dr. Daniela. I see her in the chat. But yeah, so today, if you are an IMG that's looking to be competitive in the 2024 match, I am here for you. I'm here to break it down. And I have some key guests that we're going to take a deep dive into this webinar together. Let's see if I can invite some people here. Welcome, guys. Welcome to the chat room. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have a Q&A button at the bottom there. Join on. I'm going to invite my guests to come on here. Erica. Hey, Danielle. How are you?
Hi, Dr. Lum. I'm good. How are
All
you?
right. I'm great. Where are you calling from today?
Chicago. I'm in
Nice,
Chicago right
nice,
now.
nice. Chi-town, Chi-town, Chi-town in the building. We love it. I feel like this would only allow for 4 people max. I mean, maybe 5 of us. So we may just take turns and see how it goes.
Okay.
Making sure I send out invitations to all concerned.
How's your day going? Happy Easter. Happy New Month.
Happy Easter. Happy Easter. Whoa, whoa. Dr. Toyosi in the
Hi, Dr.
building.
Toyosi.
Hi.
How's everybody doing today?
Good. I'm okay. How are you guys?
Oh, we're great. Who's too good? Jerry trying to join in. It's always weird when you do this live sessions and people trying to join in. And they're not supposed to be here, or they have a troll profile. Oh, goodness. So we have 2 others that are going to join us, but we can start. So the goal of today is just to have some discussions around preparing to be competitive at the match, even when we don't feel like it, for your respective specialties. So I know that Toyosi is like a OG at this. She's about to be a PGY3. She's like,
Yes.
I'm long gone. And Danielle is starting out PGY1 in June this year.
Yeah.
So, we're just gonna break the ice. If you ladies can tell me like your specialties and what does the word competitive mean to you when it comes to like the IMG?
I can go first. I'm currently in OBGYN. I'm going to be a third year. Competitive. When I think of competitive relation to like residency, I think of spots. And I think that's what makes things competitive is that there are not enough programs that have a lot of spots to train a physician. So for example, like I can speak for OBGYN. I'm not too sure of the number, but I think there are about like maybe 110
Mm-hmm.
OBGYN programs. But I know for like family medicine, there was like 700 programs. So there's already like a limited amount of places that can train you.
Yep.
So I think that's what I relate to competitiveness. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. 100. And that's kind of like my theory with it too. Because if there were more OB programs, or if there were more plastic surgery programs or more dermatology programs, then it wouldn't be as competitive. It's literally a demand and supply curve that has been created. Like the demand is high, much more than the supply, specialty becomes competitive.
Yeah.
So on one hand, I feel like people don't understand that, and then they feel like they must only get a competitive specialty because it's like a class thing or a status thing, when indeed it's just about numbers of spots available versus number of applicants for each spot. So the
Yeah.
fewer spots that they are, like you said, if in OB there's only 110 spots, then 110 programs, which each have a set number of spots, anywhere from like 1 to 20. But if they have only that set number of programs, then you can never fit everybody that wants to be an obstetrician into that spot at the
Exactly.
same time at the same year. Um, Danielle, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I just matched into emergency medicine. Um, and I do agree with Dr. Toyesi and you, Dr. Lum, as far as what competitive is, how like for emergency medicine, for example, it's one thing that the specialty is competitive, but then especially as an IMG and a non-US IMG, like the pool becomes even smaller because you're then looking at programs that can sponsor your visas if you do require visas and non-US IMG. And for emergency medicine, I don't think there's even up to like 100 programs that sponsor visas for non-US IMGs. So I agree. I just would like to add, and Dr. Lum, you kind of preach this a lot, the fact that as IMGs, we should not allow the fact that a specialty is competitive in terms of limited spots to prevent us from then applying to that specialty if that's the specialty that you want to go for. So a lot of IMGs have this, at least like internal medicine has so many spots. I want to do surgery, but like I'm going to apply IM because I know I have a chance of matching in there. It's like a wider pool. But like regardless of how competitive a specialty is, if that's what you want to do, like we're of the opinion that you go ahead and you apply for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm with you on that. Like no matter what, if you desire a certain specialty, I think it's imperative on you to do the work to get that specialty instead of just saying, oh well that, it's hard, or going with the norm that everybody is going with, when you could actually create an edge for yourself. You could actually improve your own competitiveness. It doesn't have, you don't have to fit the mold. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing.
Absolutely.
So taking a roundtable again, kind of going with that same approach, now that we've kind of debunked the idea of competitiveness, for your respective specialties, when you think about what makes a competitive applicant, can you share, even from your experience, Danielle, you just went through the match, like what was your experience with it? What did you notice on the interview trail? What are other people bringing to the table as far as competitiveness is concerned?
So I think with emergency medicine, one thing I noticed with AM, applying to AM and then matching AM, is the fact that the specialty is very much concerned about you as a person as compared to like high step scores or like 10 publications and 10 research whatever. They're more concerned with you as a person, your personality, if you're invested in the community, serving the underserved, because a lot of times in the emergency room, that's what you're doing. You're not like necessarily attending to people that can afford healthcare, for example, in the ER. You're not looking, that's not your business. So you need to be able to reflect that in your application, that whilst you were in medical school, or if you've graduated from medical school, that you have spent the time serving those types of populations. But then again, it depends, because if you're applying to like on mostly academic programs, if you're looking to match at an academic program, then those people are probably going to be concerned about publications and research. So I feel like having a focused application, even with emergency medicine, as much as every other specialty, will kind of help you to know exactly what it would take to be competitive for the programs and the specialty that you're applying to.
Yeah, so definitely doing a program level search as well. Dr. C, there's also someone in the chat asking the Q&A, hey, how do I become competitive for the OBGYN match?
I think for OBGYN it's kind of different. Like it's a surgical specialty, so how would I say this? Like your scores matter, but not, I would not say that as much. You have to be a good test taker because most times like it's very busy. So most programs want to know that despite how busy we are, you're still able to like accommodate or I say balance all the tasks ahead of you, because you take a lot of exams. Like you have your in-training exams, and then when you become like a second, third, and even fourth year, you have like mock oral boards, and then you still have other things that are going into it. I'll say that research is important for OBGYN, but with that being said, I do know that some people have matched without research, but you also have to take into account that you don't know what those other people's application had. Like for me, I had research because I had a lot of research because I also didn't have work experience. So I was trying to compensate other areas in my application. Like I knew I didn't have work experience, so I did a lot of volunteering. I did a lot of research. I passed my exams. I think your personal statement is also really important for obstetrics and gynecology, because our job is very like I don't know the word to use, but your patients are in a very vulnerable situation, a very vulnerable state, like trying to get pregnant, dealing with infertility, eventually becoming pregnant, or like even counseling them on birth control, or if someone even has cancer. So I think being just a well-rounded individual, like you're being compassionate, you're empathetic, you have good study habits, and you're also into research can help you with OBGYN, and also like having some form of like um stamina for surgery. That's what I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with all those points. And I think it's applicable regardless of the specialty. Like that's what a lot of people don't realize is, yeah, when you're younger in your career and you're asking, hey, how do I become competitive for this? Like it's the same strategy for every specialty. So even if you're not applying OB, you could still utilize that plan in your application process. And I think one of the mistakes that a lot of IMGs make also is they're not looking for, we're always looking for generalities, right? We're always like, tell me how to be competitive for this, but it's not that straightforward.
Hmm.
If anybody can give you a plan in the DMs and your life is changed dramatically by a live session, that person's pretty phenomenal,
Hmm.
right?
Like you,
But I
Dr.
don't think you can change somebody's entire academic plan by one tip from a live session or, one DM that's going to dramatically make you competitive. Like it's a cumulative effect of multiple different factors, which typically evolve around if you don't have the scores for it, well, what else are you bringing to the table? How are you interacting with the future programs that you have strategically pinned out to apply into? How
Hmm.
are you performing on your clinical rotations? Because there you have influence. Okay, let's say you didn't have a chance with USMLE. Well, you have a chance with clinicals or observership or whatever. How are you networking in that space? What are your letter writers saying? A lot of people undermine like the power of a recommendation. Like it's not called a letter recommendation because they just want to fool around and like, be mean about someone writing something. What those people write in those letters is actually really important. And some
Yeah.
of us don't even regard that. We don't regard the personal statement. And I mean, not to toot my own horn, but those are all things that I really dive deep into in the IMG Road Map because you can't just like do a surface level review or attend a live or get a DM and become competitive.
Yes.
It's
Oh,
almost
And
comical. Well, I mean, what do
and
you guys think?
I mean, even to add to that, I remember when I was interviewing, like one of my programs actually read the letter of recommendation one of my attendees wrote for me to me. And they really read your application. Like even in my program, we comb through everyone's application. Like we know you, we know we've read your application, we've gone through everything, we are aware of who we're interviewing that day. So the letters of recommendation really do go a long way. And I remember in that interview, they were like, the main reason they selected me to interview was mainly because of that letter, because that physician spoke so highly of me and my work ethic and who I was as a person.
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, someone asked
Danielle,
the question.
yeah,
Went
yeah, no,
away.
that was the question I took. I'm just trying to put up the next one so that we can all see that because we've answered that one. So this is the next one that came up. What is the interview process like when applying for residency? Is there a way we can make ourselves stand out?
Yeah, I could go with that one. What's the interview process like when applying for residency? I feel like there's the whole, first of all, join the IMG Road Map if you're asking this question. um,
Tell
the there's
'em.
like a whole process, the application and whatever, and then interview just kind of works like I would assume like most job interviews where there's like a panel sometimes of like four or three or five people.
Mhm.
They might ask you like it might be like individual sessions, or it might be all three or all four of them in one spot asking you questions one after the other. Is there a way to make yourself stand out? I would say, as far as like residency is concerned, one thing that I found that was very relevant to me when I was applying was to have a very focused list of programs I was applying to. Like as an IMG, the average amount of programs that most IMGs apply to is anywhere from like 80 to 100, right? That's just what everyone assumes to be normal. I applied to 47 programs. And first of all, I did not have money to apply to 100 programs. Let me just be frank. I don't have that type of money. But even more than that is the fact that I took my time to review every single program on my list and to make sure, and it wasn't just like, oh, I checked and I saw that they sponsor J1. Okay, I put them on my list. I went to every single program's website. I looked at their resident list. I looked at their program, leadership. I looked at what the residents had to say and stuff like that. So if you do the background work, to research on the programs that you apply to. And it's good that you start early as well. That's why the IMG Road Map starts from April. So if you do that background work, and then from the periods of April until September when applications are due, you start to connect with the people at these individual programs, whether it's program leadership, whether it's the residents, whatever the case is. You just put yourself out there so much so that when they pick up your application, your name does look a little familiar because they would have maybe seen you on Twitter or seen you on Instagram or seen you in like a random virtual meeting that they had. And that's another thing as well. Keep tabs on these programs. Like, you just want to put yourself out there, I think is what I'm trying to say. To make yourself stand out, you need to not be just another name on the list of people that have applied to their program. You need to have been someone that has shown consistency from like a while before you eventually submitted that application.
Yeah.
I agree with what she said. But just to add to that, even like the interview process itself, like you can submit your application and then get an interview and unfortunately not match at that program. And I think it stems from like interview preparation or even like interview etiquette, even something as little as just looking presentable, like wearing a suit or having like a good background behind you, answering the questions, like looking into the camera when you're speaking. Those things do go a long way. Because, for example, if you're not looking into like the camera when you're speaking, the person could feel like you're not paying attention to them. Or even when you practice for your interviews, just minute gestures that you make. Like me, I notice that when I'm talking, I tend to look around. So when I was practicing for my interview, someone was telling me that it looks like I'm rolling my eyes, but I'm just looking around as I'm speaking. So I think really preparing for your interviews and just even if it's just the basic few questions, like tell me about yourself, why this specialty, why this program, just being able to practice what you're saying, not saying that when you get to the interview itself, you just say everything verbatim, but you get to a point where you're comfortable in like what you're saying and you're able to get the person interviewing you to be more comfortable communicating with you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing I must add is, I again, like, when, and maybe this comes to me usually because I'm looking at it from like a retrospective perspective point of view. But people want to run and talk about interview. Like, what's your business worrying about interview? That's my question to you. Who's to say you're even gonna get an interview? You're not gonna. So, and it's the same thing with match. We all get fixated on match, 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 match. And yes, a lot of what I would put on the internet has that word in it because I want you to pay attention. But the truth is, it's not the match that really matters. It's what you make of how many interviews you're gonna get so that the match can matter for you. So if you're like sitting there and you're fixated on interview, I don't care if you interview at one program. Like, it's not gonna make a big difference. When you interview at 10 programs or more, even multiples of two, let's say six and above, then your interview begins to really make sense. Because at that point you've had programs that you practice on and then you have programs that you really deliver. But then on the flip side, if you don't even get an application that gets looked at for invitation to interview, why are you worried about interview? Like, you should be worried first about getting your application looked at, considered, you invited, then you come back here in September and we get you ready for interview. Like, it's just a process. So sometimes
Yeah.
don't get so fixated on the distant interview thing. If you can communicate, you can ace an interview. What kills us in interview is our nerves, tension, anxiety, and some of those other little nuances like body language, and sort of this like the psychological aspect of it, which is very easy to overcome. But what you really want to focus on is getting as many invitations for interview, and then because once you do something multiple times, you get comfortable. So I'm not worried about you question from stories about if you're gonna ace an interview, it's gonna come and it will come and you'll do okay. But are you gonna get those interviews? That's the question you need to ask. So we have another question. Do you recommend doing research elective as part of obtaining USCE? Is it worth looking at?
Um, I didn't do a research elective, so
Yeah.
I can't speak to that, and it didn't have like any part in my journey.
Yeah, me neither. I didn't do a research elective. I guess it also kind of depends on what specialty, because I feel like general surgery, some of these like surgical specialties, they do care for stuff like that. If you have a gap after graduation before you apply. But personally, I didn't do a research elective
Yeah,
either.
I didn't do one either. So, and I think it really depends. So, like you may have a non-US IMG that's asking this question, and that research elective may be their ticket to coming into the United States. In that case, heck, you should do it, right? Like, if that's gonna get you here to where you can network as an individual in person, I don't care what you do. Now, if you're just doing it to check a box, which is a huge problem in our community as IMGs, is we've gotten to this mindset that we just need to check off boxes. And we've taken like thoughtful reasoning out of the picture. We're not thinking about this as a human process. Like, this is part of being a physician. The people reviewing your application are human beings. So if you can justify any experience that you have and you can extrapolate lessons from those experiences and you can make them meaningful for yourself and your career, anything you do could be super valuable if it's in the medical field, if it's in the healthcare field, if the end result was a human being got a solution to a healthcare problem, whether you're answering a research question or you're taking care of a patient in a clinical setting or you're just passing simulated exams, all of that, what does that translate to? It translates to you as an individual have the capability to reason through a critical health scenario and care for a human being. And so when you take all that out of the picture and you think like, hey, I'm just gonna check off boxes, then that's really when you run into the trouble of doing experiences that you don't need, experiences that are not valuable for you. But you have to ask yourself, what is the benefit of this for me? Surgical specialties are different. When it comes to research, they're bigger on it. They may appreciate it more, but then you also have to be selective. They're not going to take your research in like, I don't know, outpatient primary care and be all happy about it. No, they want you to do bench research in surgical in surgery, or they want you to do things that are promoting the surgical field. So you got to weigh it not against just the label, but against the quality of the experience. Quality always trumps quantity. Another question on here: to come as a student in MPH and then pursue USMLE in the USA. I mean, we're not immigration attorneys, first and foremost. So that's, I should put that out there. So we can't give you advice as to what you should do regarding that. But I know tons of students that have done that. And they use it as a ticket to get what they want, which is their residency. But they're effectively enrolled in a master's program. A question from Asuma for you both. What would you recommend for people who already have red flags, try to connect the program in advance, still never get an interview invitation? So what do you recommend for someone with red flags who has tried to connect with programs in advance but still did not get invitations?
Hmm.
I think it depends on the kind of red flag that you have, first of all. Like for me, I mean, you could call them red flags. Like I had a gap in my education, mostly because of COVID. I had like a 6 month break from school, and then I'm on a visa, so I had like issues getting my visa for my rotations in the US. So I had like a year gap on on my application, so that could have been seen as a red flag. I don't know if it really counted against me because I still had invites. But I made the best out of it. I just explained my gaps in my application. And then I think in my personal statements, I explained like what I did during those gaps. Like my first 6 month gap, I used that time to reapply for my visa and take my step one and come to the United States to do my rotations. Then my second gap during COVID, I think I used that to do research, and then I joined the IMG Road Map. So I was learning more about like how to apply for residency and so forth. So I think it depends on the kind of red flag. Also, if your red flag is like failure in your step exams, I think um the people have different opinions on that, like whether you should talk about it in your personal statements or whether you should not address it. I think that's like a personal decision, and depending on how comfortable you are with that. But it really depends on the type of red flag that you have, and or if the red flag is like years of graduation, it's like very different. Like it's a different answer for the type of red flag you have. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Danielle, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with Dr. Toyosi. Like, I think it's really vital that if you do have a red flag, because before you get to the point where they interview you and bring up your red flag, just like Dr. Lum said, you do have to get the interview in the first place. And to get the interview, they have to look at your application. So, as much as you can, don't leave room for assumptions with regards to your red flags. So, whether it's in the experiences section of your ERS application or it's in your personal statement, you want to make sure that you very clearly explained not just, I think there's what Dr. Lum used to teach, not just the fact that you have a red flag, but then what did you learn from the red flag, and how has that red flag or what you've learned from it made you an even better applicant? Like, you just have to turn that thing that is supposedly a red flag to look like a green flag.
Yeah,
If
you
that
have to
makes sense.
leverage it. You have to figure out how you're going to leverage it. That's, to be honest, I think that's kind of it. We have another question, and then we're going to round up because this is supposed to be 30-minute sessions. If you want more of this, you need to join the IMG Road Map. Our doors are open. We're taking registration from now until April 14th. The keyword is, you could DM me the word right here, ready, and we'll send you the link to sign up and join us. But we have another question that says, does doing residency elsewhere and having research publication help in competitiveness? So doing
I
residency in another
Yeah,
country.
I feel like somehow that question has already been addressed if you've been paying attention and if you really think about it, because it just goes back to trying to tick things off a list. It's like, okay, so I have all these gap years and I just feel like I should go do residency in my home country while I'm waiting to, apply to residency in the US, not because of what that's going to do for me in terms of making me a better applicant or physician, but just because I feel like, oh, if I have all these years of experience, it'll be good. Or, oh yeah, I should do this research elective because, yeah, like, let me just make my application big and big and big. Like, that's not what it's about. Like, if you're going to do anything, whether it's a residency, whether it's a research publication, whatever it is, just make sure that it's focused and like there's a reason, a solid reason behind what it is that you're doing, and that you can tie it all together towards your application. You don't want to have like a random research publication around, like you're doing a residency in, like, I don't know, internal medicine, and then you want to apply plastic surgery, for example, when you could have spent that time maybe doing your USMLEs, doing some observerships, doing some shadowing in the US. Like, it just has to be something that makes sense to your final application at the end of the day.
Yeah, I 100. Tracy, before we go.
Just to touch base on that question, I agree with what she said, but also it really depends on the context. Like, is it that you're currently in residency in another country and you now want to move to the United States? That's different. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it could be a benefit because that's work experience. But if you're saying that, oh, I'll delay applying because I feel like if I already trained somewhere else, I think it's just the mindset behind it. And also, if you think about it, if you're doing residency in another country and you delay applying for your residency in America, you're acquiring increased gaps,
Years of
like since your
graduation.
training. Yeah, you're increasing your years of graduation. And sometimes it also depends on the kind of program you apply to. Like, some programs, that's something they're looking for, mainly because they don't want to spend a lot of time training you. And there's some programs that they might see that as a red flag because they might feel like you're not teachable. So it's like it's not like a hard fast rule. It can go in your favor. It can also go against you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, and I think I'm glad that you brought the context into it, because you could also have already been in a residency program to which, maybe our prior point wouldn't matter. Um, but I think that if you are going to start an endeavor in order to become competitive, you really have to ask your question, that question of why. Like, what is the rationale behind this? And is it truthful, or is it fear mongering? Is it fact, or is it fiction? Because what I run into, is I'll be talking to a coaching and IMG, and they're doing all these things that they don't even have the passion for it, but they're doing it because somebody said if you do it, you'll be better. And I'm like, and that's why you're not successful at it. That's why you hate your life, because you're doing things that you don't want to do, and you're just forcing through, just kind of checking boxes. But if you think about it and say, well, how does this play into the big picture of where I'm going, and you have some joy about it? Of course, it's not like every day enjoyable. Like, some days are hard, but if at least 65% of you is like, this is still a growth experience for me, I'm still learning, I'm still growing, there's something I'm getting out of this, I'm making connections, I can get letters from this, I can get experiences to write about in my PS, I'm learning about neurology because I love neurology and it still excites me. That's the kind of mindset that you would make the most out of that experience with. But if it's the mindset of just like, oh, here's another box, oh, I did that, okay, now I'm ready to apply, no interviews, and you're like crickets, and you're like, what happened? Well, you got to question why you're doing what you're doing, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies, for joining me today. I love having you all. I want to keep these short and sweet. If you're a listener today, this is Dr. Danielle, her Instagram. She can drop it in the chat if you want to connect with her. This is Dr. Toyosi, her Instagram. She can drop it in the chat if you want to connect with her. But more importantly, they're here. I'm speaking for them, but I don't know. But they may be willing to be here to help you out. Okay, I'm just saying. But let them tell you. Why don't you guys say your goodbyes and then we sign off.
I dropped my Instagram in the chat. My account is private, and I check. I'm on here like maybe once a month, but I'll check and respond. My own message would be, in this journey, just keep believing yourself. Even if people don't believe in you, just believe in yourself. Don't give up, because when you eventually make it, they'll be in your DMs and they'll be like asking you like, "Oh, how did you make it?" But you have to first of all believe in yourself. You have to know your why and why you're going for this. And at the end of the day, when you do get to the point of applying and then you get an interview and you do match, I really, really hope you end up where you're celebrated and not where you're tolerated. That's my goodbye message.
Mm,
That's a good one. Where you're
that'll
celebrated and
preach.
not tolerated.
That will preach. She said a lot in so little words.
Um, uh, I think for me, it would be first of all, like you could send me a DM. I think now is the time because when you get into like residency, I have like really good friends that became interns and they just forgot about my existence. Not because they don't love me, they're just really busy. So like now is the time to reach out for whatever advice or whatever you need while preparing for your application. I put my Instagram in the chat as well. I think like just to close for me, it would be believe in yourself, but then also like believe in something that is bigger than you. For
Mhm.
me, I'm a Christian, and that person or that thing that is bigger than me is God. And I can't tell you, like, we will never have enough time to explain to you the multiple ways that, just by virtue of holding on to my faith in God, I was able to get through the entire residency program. So if you're a Muslim, if you're a Christian, whatever religion it is that you practice, it just really helps because it's going to get really tough. The road is going to get really rough, and it would really help to just have that higher power that you believe in, and you just believe that whatever it is that's happening is working out for your good. And you can do this. Like if we could do it, if I could do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with both of your words of wisdom. And I agree with, believing in yourself, but more importantly, believing in God, because there's just so much that you can do as a human, but there's so much that's also outside of your control.
Hmm.
And sometimes that requires faith to be able to see a future that's positive in spite of how bad the present is. And I think for me, also as a Christian believer, that has been like an anchoring foundation. Like in the more difficult days, sometimes the only thing I have to lean toward is my faith. Because some days you have zero power, zero energy, zero determination, and zero belief in yourself. But it helps sometimes to know that God is on your side, and the plan that He has put in your heart. And if that's to be a doctor and to do it by through residency in the US, they'll come to pass. 100. So you have to believe that, believe His word in your life, believe the call of God over your life, and let it manifest. So thank you all for joining me. And if you want me to coach you in 2024 into residency, just DM me the word ready in the DMs, and let's take it from there because I have something for you and I think that you will benefit greatly from it. It's my coaching program that starts on April 14th. You don't want to miss it. Don't want to miss it. All
I
right.
agree.
All right. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you,
Bye.
Dr. Lim.
Bye.
Bye, guys.